This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze, your journey through life. And we now have two Avoid the Mazes. One is the one we're doing today, your journey through life. The other one is Avoid the Maze, you are special. And my guest today fits into both categories, and I'm going to explain why. We go through life thinking that everything is going to go along smoothly, but there are no big issues that we're going to handle, whether it's taking care of our kids, taking care of ourselves, or just being that good neighbor. But sometimes life happens, and life happened to Dana Diaz, and she's going to tell us her journey and how what happened to her has changed her. And maybe this was always in you, Dana. Maybe you always had the drive to help other people.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just takes one incident and you say, you know what? I need to share this. So, welcome to Avoid the Maze and tell us why I think you're special.
Well, I'm not sure why you think I'm special, but I don't think I'm really all that special. I'm just somebody who has kind of opened my eyes to what I spent my life in. I mean, it took me until I was 45 years old to kind of wake up, so to speak. And it's very unfortunate that it was after an abusive childhood and then a 25-year-long relationship and marriage as an adult. To basically come to where I am now. But I'm glad for it. And I think that that's what we have to look at, instead of dwelling on that pain and dwelling on the angst. And we are all justified to do that. But to look at our past and learn from it, understand it, grow from it. But specifically, what happened was towards the end of my first marriage, I had gotten very ill. I mean, the marriage had never been a good idea. Even on my wedding day, I literally remember thinking as I'm walking down the aisle, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like this, I remember even specifically thinking I'm going to get divorced. Like this is not going to work. Why do I think this is a good idea? But here I am 25 years later. I'm very ill. Um, and the thing about abuse and I have to be clear, I didn't have black eyes. Nobody was, physically beating me, but it was all the other stuff.
Right.
It was the financial abuse, the legal abuse, the physical threat, the stalking, the gaslighting, manipulating, using our son as a pawn against me, smearing my name to others behind my back, isolating me, all these different things that just destroyed me on the inside, but they began to manifest physically. So it's not that any one traumatic thing or multiple traumatic things happened. It was every day, every single day. And it wasn't just one thing every day. It was I always say it was like being in a minefield. Things were blowing up all around me. If I was quiet and treaded carefully, things blew up. If I spoke my mind and asserted myself, things blew up. So I got very ill. Long and short of the illness was I dropped down to 93 skeletal pounds, which is not normal. I've always been small, but that is it was sickly and I was scaring myself, and I had neurological issues. It was problems with my vision, cardiovascular, muscular, digestive. I mean, you name it, there was stuff going on in my body that didn't seem to be related, but it's not like my whole body could give out at once, except it did. So it took a year or so of testing for doctors to finally get me with Mayo Clinic and figure out I had so much cortisol, which is a stress hormone, running through my body for being in fight or flight mode for over 4 decades, that my white blood cells thought it had to eradicate something, that they ended up killing themselves off. So I was having autoimmune reactions all over, even developed a lung disease. You'll hear the scratchiness in my voice. Never smoked a cigarette in my life, never had asthma, but I developed a lung disease as a result of stress. And the doctors say what I have is actually very rare, but it's very common for victims of abuse. And the symptoms are very much like having fibromyalgia and COPD all at once. So it was like musical symptoms every day. And it's my souvenir, as I call it, of my past. But I'm glad that it took, I mean, I'm sorry that it took something so severe to wake me up. It's not like I didn't know the situation I was in. I just didn't realize that it could actually kill my body, not
Sure.
just my spirit. And that's when I decided, okay, number one, this is going to end. I may not love myself or have much esteem, but I have enough respect for my one life that I want to live it. So I got myself out of the situation and have since realized that when you remove toxicity from your life, whether it's in people, in food, in situations, whatever it is, it's just amazing, the growth and just everything just opens up. I wish I could show people what it looks like, because then they might make the
Right.
change too. But I just felt a responsibility, especially because of the physical aspect. I think a lot of us suppress our emotions and suppress our feelings, thinking we're doing good and we're noble and everything will be peaceful and everything will be okay. If we just don't cause conflict and we don't cause any upset, but we're doing ourselves a disservice. And I see that now. So I just want to share that message and show people also that it is so much better on the other side of it.
You know, there's so many pieces of your story that I
Yeah.
truly relate to. Did not have a childhood abusive relationship except with myself. And I
Hmm.
didn't realize that, oh God, 50 years later. Um, I thought I wasn't liked in elementary school. I thought everybody was against me. And I would come
Hmm.
home and I would cry about it. And I made it into such a thing that my parents didn't even know how to relate to it. And my mother kept
Right.
saying, then go find other friends. And it's like, well, wait a second. These are the people that I sit with in my classroom. Where am I going to go find other friends? Um,
Right.
and so I tried to bury it as much as I could. And at my first reunion, we had actually had an elementary school reunion. I chose I wanted to go back because there were one or two people that I was really friends with. And when I shared my angst growing up, they all looked at me like, no, we liked you. They had no idea what I had gone through. And
Right.
that was my way of opening up and thinking, you know what? I don't know what caused me to feel that way, but now I have to work through it. And I
Yes.
took that feeling into my first marriage. And so feeling that my mother-in-law at the time didn't like me, which was the truth, uh, but it made it worse for me
Right.
because it
Right.
just kept, in my mind, it got bigger and bigger instead of
Right.
accepting the fact that, hey, she doesn't like me. She's never going to like me. Okay, that's it. No, I made it so bad that my husband, even though I don't think he had a close relationship really with his mother, became defensive. And because he became defensive,
Mhm.
again,
Right.
it was the verbal abuse. And
Right.
I thought I deserved it.
Right. And that's the interesting thing is that, people will often ask me, what are the red flags in other people? And I don't do red flags because I think that it's not about other people so much as that ourselves. Because this is in so many different aspects of what you just said. Because like I look at like my biological mother and father were never together even during well, I shouldn't say that. They were when I was conceived, but not, they were
Sure.
separated before I was born. But, you know, my siblings from my biological father, they grew up very, with two parents who loved them, wanted them, all these things that I did not grow up with, but they would have never been in the relationship I was in as an adult because they had self-esteem and they had confidence and they had boundaries. I had none. But in that aspect, I look at that like it's never about the other person. Like my sister from my biological father would have never been with my ex because she would have never put up with that. But me with my loose boundaries and my people pleasing tendencies, and I realize now I was very codependent because I was searching for any crumb of affection or attention to validate myself because I didn't feel worthy, as a result of my childhood. So I totally relate to what you said because I was that kid. As a matter of fact, my next book about my childhood is coming out in October. And it's about this shame that I carried, which for me came from the abusive, mother and stepfather. But I took that to school too. I was that little girl that felt like I never belonged, and the kids would make fun of me, which therefore validated everything I thought about myself. And then I grew up and went to high school, and same thing. Anything that came against me, I feel like whether it's in a marriage, at school, at work, whatever part of our life, we use all those little bits of evidence to support these ideas that we already have about ourselves. But the thing is that, look at people who do have healthy self-esteem. I mean, my unfortunate area of expertise is narcissism, but look on social media at people with the bodies and the confidence and all this stuff. They think they're all that. And some of them really are. Most of them usually are. But then there's some like, I mean, even on vacation, we'll be on a beach and I'm like, oh, I got this little belly. I'm like 100 pounds. And oh, my bikini, I feel weird. And I don't look as good as I should. But then I'll see somebody, and no offense, but, a very large, woman that is walking down the beach in her thong bikini, like she is it. And I'm like, I want that. And here I am, like 3 times less in size, and I'm worried about my little tiny belly or something. It's so weird how we perceive ourselves because, again, we're looking for evidence in the world for that when we should be looking for evidence of how wonderful we are. Because the thing is, we all have these strengths and these wonderful, unique qualities about us, but we don't see them. And, another thing you were talking about was, kind of being shushed as a child. And I think it's very important for us to realize, because we were talking about this before we came on, is that, as a society, things have changed. I mean, even in our lifetime, I look at back in the 70s when I was born, a woman could not file charges against her husband
Right.
if he beat her. A woman couldn't even have a bank account or a credit card without her husband. It's so alarming, and I don't want to get into feminist stuff here, but we weren't taken seriously. So men knew that they could treat us a certain way, and women didn't talk about it. You covered up, here's my hair and my face. I even remember in school as a girl, when I had some bruises, I would cover them up, with my hair. Or you wear the long sleeves and long pants and 80-degree summer heat to cover things up. But that's what we were taught to do. Suppress it, hide it. Polite society doesn't talk about it. And I'm not sure if that was the right way to do it, because it took away the voice and the power from women. But I mean, this happens to men too, certainly. But for us, we are in a society now where everything is out there, probably a little too much so. But I think it does open up the opportunity for us to say, okay, this isn't right. We don't get to be treated this way. We don't want to be treated this way. But again, we are still seeing, as I told you, I have 18, 19-year-old girls come to me with these problems. I've talked to women in their 80s who experience this, but we can take the power now. We can look at ourselves as confident, independent, strong women, who have rights, and we have the right to assert ourselves and say, no, this is not how I want to be treated. And this is going to be with your families, with your friends, your coworkers, your kids, your husbands, wives, whoever. But it's time to do that because, I use this analogy. I always say that I felt like this like wilted little flower in a garden with all these weeds that were coming up around me, preventing me from soaking in the rain and the sunshine, and it was dark and awful there. And I just kept wilting and withering away. That was my spirit withering away. And since I've removed these people from my life, that were not serving me any good purpose, or some of them remove themselves, it's like, oh, the sunlight, it's there. And I'm getting the rain and I'm getting the nourishment because they're not sucking it out of the soil. But I'm also seeing that there's other flowers in the garden. And the key is that those flowers were always there. Those people from your elementary school that said they liked you, they were always there.
Yeah.
You were just so focused on the weeds that were around you, just as I was. But I think it's an interesting thing because somebody else, like I'll use my sister as an example again, having grown up with confidence and esteem and healthy boundaries, she would have been that flower that was just like, oh, I got to get these weeds out of my way. And she would have just risen above them, no problem. Whereas, people like you and I, for whatever reasons, just, took that as, oh, they're overpowering me. I'm just going to wither and put myself down so I stay out of their way. But now it's time for us to grow and rise above them. Get those weeds out of the way, get yourself sunshine. But that's the thing. It's about us. We can't rely on outward validation. We have to validate ourselves.
I think the reason you're hearing 18-year-olds and 80-year-olds talking about this is that there's still that gray area.
Mm-hmm.
Who can we talk to? Who can we trust?
Yes.
Okay. And oftentimes, is it me or
Yes.
is it somebody else? And I know I've been married to my current husband now for over 40 years. And from the first day he met me, he said things like, "You're smart. You know how to do it." Even if I
Yeah.
didn't, even if I had no idea, then he would throw me this little pebble that would be like, "Oh, I see. So now if I plant that, I'll know how to do it." And my parents were great parents, but they grew up during the Depression. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't know other than, this is what you have to do because this is what they had to do.
Right.
And when I opened up to my mother when I was getting my divorce, her first reaction, she did not like my husband. So, everybody got to hear this. But the first thing she said to me was, "What did you do wrong?"
Exactly.
And my comment was, "I don't know." And then I started spilling out all this garbage. And she could pick out of that garbage the things that I did wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
she'd say, "Well, why did you do that?" But it took her a number of years where she finally said, "I'm sorry.
Right.
I didn't know how to listen to you." She said, "I just figured if you were in love with him, you must have done something wrong." And she said, "But I realized you didn't." And that's when I could start really growing. I could
Mm-hmm.
believe my current husband when he would say, "You're beautiful. You know how to do this." Or, you know, let's try not to think about the past, try to think about the future. And I always kept grabbing back to it. And I'm sure at some point you do too. It's like, wait a
Oh,
second,
100%.
I'm not good enough because so and so told me that 50 years ago. And then you have to shake it off and say, okay, I am good enough. What, other than your health, okay, how did you then start moving forward and realize, okay, I got to get rid of these people. I've got to go find some new people because that's only when the healing is going to start.
Yeah, I just think it's a matter of coming to the understanding that our circumstances are not good for us. When you understand the circumstances are toxic, for me, what was really hard, it was my mother, my stepfather, my husband. These are you know, it's so hard when the people that are supposed to be your foundation and your strength that you can turn to are the ones that you have to leave behind if you're going to survive. So I can't express in words the pain I'm getting chills now just talking about it, of not only realizing it, but having to enact it. Fortunately for me, I guess it's fortunate, my mother and stepfather chose to remove themselves from my life. Because I mean, who doesn't want a mother? But I never had a mother, and that's the thing for me. She was always emotionally distant and just not, she hadn't wanted me. So even in my mid 40s, she never came around, and my stepfather wanted me even less because I wasn't his. He didn't feel that he should have to pay for another man's child, and even as an adult, he didn't have to pay for me anymore, but he was not kind. But I think it just comes to the point where you just have to have enough strength, um, and courage to know that there is more. But it does help. And see, I don't think I could have done this on my own. Maybe I could have, and I'm not giving myself credit, but I did have those other flowers in the garden that once I was kind of abandoned by the main people in my life and then got myself out of that marriage, it was just like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? I have nobody. I'm all alone. Like we all get to that point. But those other flowers were just kind of like there, like, hey, we may not be biologically related. There were two that were, but but we're here for you. We will make sure, like they were kind of my crutches to help me back up on my feet and to show me the way. And like you were saying, your husband does for you, to speak those words of positivity. You can do this. We're proud of you. Do you know I was what, 44 years old when somebody told me they were proud of me, and I'd never been told that by a parent ever, or anybody. And it was one of my adult friends' father-in-law said, I'm proud of you. And I will never forget that in my life. So when people are speaking words of positivity, when you are choosing the people around you, the right people, and they are for you and they're encouraging you and supporting you, it helps our own self-talk. It helps us start thinking, oh, if they're proud of me, maybe I can be proud of myself. Maybe I am okay. Maybe I'm not this person that I have created this idea about in my head. Because why do we buy into these beliefs about ourselves that other people have chosen for us? I think it's such a disservice. But how do we get out of it? I think you just get to the point where you remove the glasses and you see things for what they really are. Because once you don't have those people gaslighting you and telling you, no disrespect to your mother, but here I was with a mother too. He cheated on me again. Well, you made a commitment. You're in a marriage, and it was just like, turn your head. You're supposed to stay married. You're supposed to be a wife. You're supposed to be a mother. You're supposed to, well, it was killing me. And I tried so hard to hold on to that. But once I let it go and took the pressure off, and also stopped believing that I wasn't enough and I wasn't worthy and that I couldn't and never would, and all these things that were told to me by mom, stepdad, and my ex-husband, it's amazing what I've accomplished in such a short time. All the things they said that I would never be and never do and couldn't, and I wasn't competent and I wasn't smart and I wasn't skinny enough and I wasn't all this stuff. Once I just threw that away and said, no, you know what? I am enough. And oh my gosh, look at me. I am pretty smart because I can do this and I can accomplish that. Now I can, and it's only been what, 4 years since my divorce, not even in a short time, it'll be 4 years. But I feel like I can finally look at myself in the mirror and say, good job, girl. Real good job. Like I literally pat myself on the back. I take a hand and put it on my shoulder, even for the little things. Like, the other day, something that would have been very triggering for me in the past and put me in a very deep depression for days. I was like, I should be feeling more about this. This should be affecting me. But I've been working on things. I've been healing. I've been dealing with my past. And I'm like, I'm not feeling any certain way. Good job, girl. Good job. Good job for not reacting or, to that trigger. Because I think we get so concerned also that when people come around, we get so focused on these labels. Oh, you have bipolar disorder, you have anxiety, you have depression, you have a past that
Yes.
you are affected by. And don't we all? And guess what? Forgive me, but I don't give a crap about these labels, because there is nothing wrong with you if you have anxiety. There's nothing wrong with you if you have depression. I've read this in numerous places, but they say if you have depression, it's because you're holding on to something from your past. If you have anxiety, it's because you're worried about the future. And if you have depression from the past, of course you're worried about your future, because as you said early on, we learn not to trust situations.
Right.
People are making us distrust ourselves every time they say, suppress that emotion. Don't feel that. You shouldn't feel that. Guess what? Give yourself permission. Don't buy into this idea that you have to start forgiving people to heal, or doing this or doing that. It starts with giving yourself permission to feel, to be whatever you are, to be who you are. I don't care what people want to call me. I have been called crazy and everything else. And you know what? I'm good with myself. I'm good with myself, because we all have things, we all have issues. Nobody is any better than anyone else. I know my heart, and it's good and pure. And I think it comes down to intention. People who have done us harm had terrible intentions. And if you have good intentions and you're a good person and you put that out in the world, you'll be okay with yourself. And I think that once sorry, I have so many things running through my
No,
head,
it's
but I will
okay.
say this, because this pertains to mental and physical illness. There's actually two doctors I follow, a lot of their stuff. And one is Dr. Gabor Mate. I don't know if anybody has ever read or heard about him. He has numerous books, but he is brilliant. And one of his parents tried to kill him when he was 8 years old. I mean, so he comes from a terrible past, but he is a brilliant um, doctor of everything trauma, and he doesn't buy into labels. In his most recent book, In the Myth of Normal, he talks about how physical disease, we go to medical doctors and they're treating our bodies, they're throwing a pill at our symptoms, but the core of things starts in our head. Because disease, if you break it down, is dis-ease. You are uneasy. If you are living a life that is not good for you, and this is a very broad and general way to put it, your body will tell you that. You're uneasy, you feel unsettled, something in you is telling you something is wrong. Anxiety, all it is like the smoke alarm in your house saying, warning, warning. It's not a bad thing to have anxiety. So we have to stop putting these ideas in our head that it's bad to feel, it's bad to talk about this ugly stuff, it's bad to have anxiety, it's bad to have depression. Oh, you should feel ashamed, you're going to therapy, you're crazy, you need therapy, you need help. Stop telling yourself these are bad things. It's okay to deal with the things that bother you, because then you are taking care of yourself. Because I'm going to say this, back to the physical part. Since I've been out of my, situation and have no contact with either of my, my mother, stepfather, my ex, all these people, and I am safe at my central nervous system, my parasympathetic nervous, all these things have settled in my body. I have ease. So my disease has eased up. I don't have all the symptoms that I had every single day. I am at a healthy weight now. I am not needing my oxygen machine or my inhaler or all these other things that I needed. I used to have to carry around a diaper bag, like literally, with all my EpiPen and my inhaler and my oxygen machine and a medicine for my stomach and a medicine. I don't need all that anymore. I can leave the house with just my wallet, and it's so freeing and liberating. But we have the choice to give ourselves permission to have that freedom and to have that ease in our soul and in our spirit. We just have to give ourselves that permission. That's the key.
I mean, your message is so strong, and it's one of the big messages I use with in my coaching business is that let's not worry about what happened in the past. Okay. Where do you want to be today? Where do you
Yes.
want to be tomorrow? And that's where my healing came from. It was like for years, you know, I thought I didn't have a good relationship with my mother. I loved her. I knew she loved me,
Right.
but I always would say we have a love-hate relationship.
Hmm.
But I refused to give up on it. I didn't overdo it on my side, though. It was like, I'm going to be the loving daughter. I'm going to take what I can take. And if there's no more, there's no more. And there always was a lot, but it wasn't until my mother got ill in her last 2.5 months of life when I lived with her. She didn't ask me to. In fact, she didn't even know she was dying, but I felt I had to be there. And that's when I realized that we didn't have a love-hate relationship. We actually had a loving relationship. What I hated was my feelings, my expectations. And a
Yes.
lot of those came from either social media or TV. I remember one day saying to my mother, why can't you be more like Donna Reed? And I remember her looking at me and going, well, your father's not a doctor. It was like, and that's what she saw. Donna Reed was the wife of a doctor, not,
Right.
she didn't see the parenting side. And it was like, but look how good she is with her kids. But now I look back, my mom was good with us. I
Yeah.
just wanted this fictitious person, who wore beautiful dresses and pearls and whatever. And when I finally gave that up and said, I'm not going to worry about what I didn't have,
Yeah.
what can I have? And on my
Yeah.
down days, and I hope our listeners understand this, that Dana and I are not perfect 24/7.
No.
And when I get down, I basically find a way to stop myself and say, okay, where are you going with this? Does that really make you feel good? And when I realize, no, it doesn't, it's like, okay, climb back up, find something, whether it's looking out my window and seeing the sun shining, or talking to you and seeing your growth. It's like, okay, I can do it. And I think all those individuals out there, the 18-year-olds, the 40-year-olds, the 80-year-olds, you don't have to be miserable and you don't have
Exactly.
to hurt physically either.
Well, and you know what's interesting? I remember I was just leaving church with a friend a handful of years ago, and her teenage son was, I don't know what he was talking about, some relationship with a girl he was dating. And I remember her saying to him, if somebody makes you sadder, more sad than you are happy, if you're sad more of the time than you're happy, then maybe it's just not a good fit. It doesn't mean you don't love them or care about them, but maybe it's not a good fit. And I remember looking at her. I mean, I looked at her like she had three heads or something. And I'm like, where were you when I was growing up? Like, that is the best advice. But it's interesting because I always say we try so hard to take that piece of the puzzle that almost like it looks like it should fit, and we want to fit it in that spot that we can't find that puzzle piece for. And so we push and we force. I mean, I'm exhausted just talking about it because when the puzzle piece, when you find that right one, it just slides right in, right? Pops right in.
Exactly.
We
Yeah,
don't do that with our life. We come up with reasons that we are deficient or we're not doing something right, or it's somebody else. We're placing the blame on someone or something instead of just saying it's just not a fit. My mother and I just were never going to be a good fit. And we forget sometimes that everybody else is going through a human experience of their own. You
exactly.
know, growing up, even in my 40s, it took me a long time to realize that, I was so focused on me and my pain and why not this and why not that, that I didn't even stop to think, wow, I mean, I knew my mother's history. She had an abusive childhood and her marriage. I mean, her husband's something, he's something else, but she's going through her own stuff. D does that mean that I was, kind of jilted in a way? I mean, that's what I felt, but she didn't do it to me on, well, I think it was purposeful. I think what I'm trying to get at here is just, instead of delving into my
Yep.
childhood, is just, I think we forget that everybody else is going through their own human experience because we're so focused on ourselves. I mean, which is narcissistic in itself. Even if
Yep.
we're not narcissists, we have that tendency to like, why don't they like me? What am I not doing? Why this, why that? And we have to stop and say, I mean, we don't know. They could have just been told they had cancer. They could have stuff from their past they never told us about. Or, that cousin fought in a war. Maybe he's dealing with some PTSD and just doesn't know how to connect to people. Like we have no idea, but we're so concerned about why we don't fit with others, why people don't like us, why this, when we should just focus on the puzzle pieces that go easily, that you meet that person and you just click from the second you start talking and they become our best friend. But with relationships, with family, we try to force things that just aren't going to be. And I will address this too, is what you said. Anybody that works in our realm, none of us are perfect, but the thing is, guess what? Nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect.
Exactly.
We all carry shame and guilt. That stuff does not go away. Those loops in my head of my stepfather and the verbal abuse and things my mother said and did, they're on like a constant loop in my head. It's just what I choose to focus on. And I too have remarried and have a wonderful man that I am married to, that he focuses on these positive things about me. When he leaves for the day, he'll say, okay, go save the world, because he knows I have 3 podcasts, or I'm writing a part of my book or revising. He'll say, he'll call in the middle of the day, how's my little author doing? Are you getting good writing done? These are positive things, not what I would have gotten in my former marriage is, you're wasting your time. I don't know why you're doing that crap. You should be cleaning the house. The laundry's not done. You know, who are we surrounding ourselves with, and what power are we giving them to determine who we are? What are you focusing on? Because what you focus on about yourself or others, it is going to lead you down whatever roads you go. But none of us are immune. We all stumble back. And I'm going to go so far, if anyone's listening saying, oh, but I can't be like that, I'm not like you, today's a good day. Every day is a good day. It's what you make of it. Does that mean that some days are not good? Yes, that does mean some days are not good. Nobody's healing journey ever ends. I'm going to be completely full disclosure. I don't even know that it was probably less than 2 months ago. I had a day that something, I mean, I'm pretty good with my triggers now, but something triggered me and I could not stop myself. And I was starting to have feelings that I didn't want to live anymore. It happens. It happens to all of us. We're not perfect. I'm just very fortunate that I now have people in my life, and I have learned to ask for help, where I've never been very good at that, because growing up, it was, you're too sensitive. You shouldn't feel that way. Deal with it on your own, so I always relied only on myself. But now I've learned to reach out and say, I'm not okay. I need a little help today. And I get funny memes from, my one friend, or I get support from my husband, whatever it is, but none of us are perfect. And even the people who think they're perfect, let me tell you, they're not perfect. So we need to stop beating ourselves up. We need to stop beating ourselves up and start talking to us like we would talk to somebody else when
Absolutely.
somebody else reaches out and says, I'm not okay today. I need a little help. So what are
Yeah.
you saying to yourself? What do you want? Do you want this situation? Do you want, of course you don't. So stop going down. I mean, I go down the rabbit hole very quickly sometimes, but I can catch myself and say, I'm not doing this today, Dana. Not going there, because it's not true. It's a lie. and stop believing people who were never for you, and stop believing these ideas that everybody, because I too, I mean, 40 years, everybody was against me. I'm the victim. And we hold on to this victimhood. You know why? Because it's safe there, because we're
Absolutely.
justified to feel that way. And it's scary to go out down that different path that is less traveled because we don't know what's down there. Even if we're told there's sunshine and rainbows, it's almost safer in the dark and in this dark, scary place because we know how to manage there. But we got to go down that road. Go do something different. Take care of you. Don't believe all these stories about you, and it'll be okay. But that's the key thing, is that you just have to make the decision. The power is really within all of us. We just have to decide it.
You know, your message is so important. A little over a week ago, my husband very rarely does anything on his own. I mean, he works a full-time job, so he's out of the house quite a bit. But on the weekend, it's usually the two of us. And a week ago Sunday, he just said he was going out.
Mhm.
And it triggered me because when my first husband would say that, I knew where
Mm-hmm.
it was leading.
Yeah.
And I looked at my husband and I said, do you want me to go with you? He goes, no, I'm going by myself. Now I was busy doing something. So if I go back and look at the situation, he was being nice to me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're busy doing something. I just need to get out of the house. Well, he left and I sat at my desk right here crying like a baby
Yeah.
and I couldn't stop. Well, my oldest son typically calls me on Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock. It's almost like clockwork. And I texted him very quickly and I said, please don't call today. I'm having a down day. I don't want to get you down. Could you just, and he texted back and he said, I'm here if you need me. I understand. Within 20 minutes, my husband came back. He said, do you really want to go with me? And I said, well, I offered. But in the meantime, I'm still crying.
Yeah.
And I went with him, but I had this heavy feeling there's just something wrong. My first marriage, I never would have brought it up because I would have been told I was faking it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my husband, he goes, I just realized, honey, after being married 40 years, I don't play golf. I don't play cards with the guys. I I don't have any real male friends. I just want to know what it would feel like just going out. And he never opens up like that. And the fact that he opened up because he saw my tears, I said, wow, I never thought about that.
Right.
And so last 40 years probably have been tough on you because it's all about me and our kids. And he goes, but that's okay. He says, I don't like being by myself. So the next time I tell you I'm going out by myself, he said, just follow me. And for those of you listening, sometimes we take it, somebody else's words or actions personally. And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it has nothing to do with us, but you remember something from your past. And I cannot tell you, ladies, gentlemen who are out there, when my first husband would say he was going out on his own, I knew he was cheating.
Yeah.
And I knew I couldn't say anything about it because a good wife doesn't do that. But
Right.
truthfully, a good person takes care of themselves. They don't wait for their spouse, their parents, their siblings to take care of them. And that's what you're learning. And I think that is phenomenal, Dana. I mean, 4 years is a baby step right now.
Yeah. It really is. And even just how far I've come, I mean, I've actually resumed, it's actually not technically therapy, but a healing, another phase of my healing journey I started 2 months ago because writing my second book about my childhood just tore open scars that hadn't fully healed. And to see how far I've come even in that 2 months, I think we just have to find it, realize that we can't do it on our own. We have to have the desire to want better for ourselves and to know, again, it's that permission that it's not always going to be perfect and okay. I mean, I totally relate to these stories that you're telling. Even yesterday I had, a situation myself with my husband. His back went out and, he's in pain, and he's normally very cheery and happy. And he just had he's trying so hard to be happy, but you can see in his face that he's in pain. But again, I like you, I reverted back to, oh, he's not pleased with me. I did something wrong. And then I had to stop myself and say, no, this is not my first husband. This man is in pain. And again, that's why I'm saying it's not about us. He's going through something right now. He can't be happy and cheery when I wouldn't be. I'm a bear when I'm sick. I'm a whiny baby. So I had to get out of my own head for 1 second and say, no, this is about him. And I just need to support him in this, and everything's fine. So if you can stop yourself because one thing I always tell him, and people can say this all the time. They're telling you something and they say, I don't know why so-and-so is acting like that, because it's never about the thing that's happening. It's never about the present. Give me a break. It's always about something that happened in the past,
Exactly.
always, not just with ourselves, but with other people. And if you think about it, how complex is life when we're trying to navigate, the little things, the million things we do every day, and manage these interactions, yet all of these interactions are being fueled by everybody's perspectives, culturally, geographically, things from their past affecting their behaviors now. And wow, what a complex system of craziness that all is. So why do we beat ourselves up? Stop beating yourself up, because you know what? We're all in this. It's like a big chili pot that we basically like hurl ourselves into every day
Love
with all
that.
the little challenges of life and all the good things, and, a little more salt and a little more pepper and maybe a little brown sugar. You just keep throwing stuff in there, but you're also throwing in everybody's history, your perspectives, your idea about yourself, your idea about others. You just have to come to terms. If you can find a place where you take it all in stride, so to speak, for lack of better words, where you're not reacting because you're realizing, okay, my issues are coming from somewhere else, so I'm going to stop myself right now. Or their issues are something they're dealing with. And maybe, I don't know it, even if it's your husband that you've been with how long, maybe you don't know where this is coming from. So, just to have that perspective sometimes will give you that little bit of inner peace and give you some clarity to move forward, with a more level head and a little more confidence in yourself and a little less doubt.
I love it. So tell our listeners how they can find you and when your book is coming out so that we can all read it and, reflect on how we want to make our lives better.
Well, thank you. DanaSDiaz.com. My website has my current book on there. It came out last summer. It's called Gasping for Air, The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse. That delves into what I call the psychological warfare of my previous marriage, that 25-year relationship. My second book in my narcissist trilogy is called Choking on Shame, The Scapegoat Child in a Narcissistic Family. That will be coming out October 2024, very shortly. And that kind of dives into how that dynamic between parents and even culturally and at that time, all the different things that shape who we are and how it eventually affects our adulthood and our ideas about ourselves and what relationships are. But certainly social media links are also on the website. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So if anyone has anything that they want to share, message me. I do respond to messages personally, and I always like to have questions and feedback from people.
It's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I hope your husband starts to feel better. Uh,
I know back pain is the worst,
yeah.
but he
Uh,
will. He'll be okay. He always has a smile on his face. I'll tell you what, and I love it because it helps me keep a
I'm sure.
smile on mine.
Wonderful. Thank you. You've been a wonderful guest today. Take care now.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.